There's a guy, let's call him Emrys. Emrys is smart, deeply observant, the kind of person who notices the thing underneath the thing. The subtext, the pattern, the thing everyone else walked right past without blinking. He doesn't need a packed calendar to feel alive. He doesn't need the noise. He actually enjoys his own company. And for a long time, that felt like a superpower. But then something started happening. Slowly, quietly, almost like a gas leak you can't smell until you're already dizzy on the floor. Emrys started feeling wrong. Not sick, not broken, not sad in any way he could name. Just wrong, like he was out of step with everything around him. Like the world kept moving in a rhythm he couldn't follow, no matter how hard he tried. Like every single structure built around him. Every system, every expectation, every unspoken rule was sending the same silent message over and over. The way you are is a problem. And here's what nobody told him. Nobody told Emrys that the wrongness wasn't coming from inside him. It was coming from the outside. Every time he pushed himself to show up the way the world asked, every time he went anyway, said yes anyway, performed anyway, he came home and sat in the dark and felt something he couldn't explain. Not just tired, emptied, like something had been taken from him, and he didn't even know where to file the complaint. Today we're pulling back the curtain on exactly what that feeling is, where it comes from, and why nobody talks about it. 6 signs that modern life, the systems, the structures, the architecture of daily existence, was built in a way that slowly, methodically chips away at the mind of someone who lives on the inside, someone who thinks in depth, someone who walks alone by nature, someone who doesn't need the crowd but keeps getting handed the bill for it anyway. This isn't self-help. This isn't a list of tips. This is an exposure. Stay with it, because by sign 4, something is going to click that might make you want to sit in silence for a very long time. And Emrys pays for every second of it. There's a specific moment Emrys noticed something was off. He was in the bathroom. Not at work, not at a party. In his own bathroom, alone, at home. And he realized he had his phone in his hand, not because he needed it, not because anyone messaged him, not because he wanted to message anyone. He brought it in automatically, without deciding to, without even noticing, until he was already standing there, scrolling, in the one room in the house where a person used to be completely and totally alone with their own thoughts. He stood there and looked at it, and couldn't remember when that started. But here's what he doesn't understand about that moment yet. That wasn't a bad habit. That was the result of a nervous system that had been so thoroughly trained to expect constant input. That 30 seconds of genuine silence now felt like something was wrong, like a gap that needed filling, like a malfunction. Here's what nobody at the dinner party will tell you. Silence is not empty for a mind like Emrys's. Silence is where he actually lives. It is not laziness, it is not avoidance. It is not a symptom. It is the specific environment his brain was built to run in. In silence, his mind makes connections that it simply cannot make in noise. Problems that seemed impossible start to loosen. Threads that seemed unrelated start to weave. The noise settles and something underneath it, something real, something his, rises to the surface. But here's the cost nobody counts. Every hour Emrys spends in a noise-saturated environment his brain didn't choose. His nervous system is running in a state of low-grade alert. Not panic, not obvious stress, just on, always on, processing, filtering, fending off. And by the time he gets home, he hasn't just used energy. He has used the specific energy that his deepest thinking runs on, the tank that takes the longest to refill. And he's been draining it since 8 a.m., so when he finally gets the silence he needs, he's too depleted to use it. He sits in the quiet, and nothing comes. The thoughts that used to rise to the surface don't rise because the machinery is exhausted. And he doesn't know why he feels creatively hollow. He doesn't know why the ideas stopped coming. He just knows something is wrong. And the world has a very convenient answer ready. You should get out more. And what it costs to wear a face that isn't yours. Emrys got promoted once, and the thing nobody prepared him for wasn't the new responsibility. It was the lunch. The celebratory lunch his team threw for him. 12 people, a restaurant, everyone in a good mood, genuinely happy for him. And Emrys sat at the head of that table for 90 minutes and performed the most exhausting role of his life. Grateful, warm, open, present, funny at the right moments. He said the right things. He laughed at the right times. He made everyone feel like the lunch was exactly what he needed. And when it was over and he got back to his desk, he put his head in his hands, not because anything bad happened, not because anyone was unkind, but because he had just spent 90 minutes being celebrated in a way that required him to be someone he wasn't. Loudly, publicly, with no exit. And the worst part, he couldn't explain it to anyone, because from the outside it was a perfect lunch. He had no right to be this drained, and yet, and watch what Emrys does the next time something like that happens. And for the next 2 hours, Emrys holds a shape that is not his. He laughs a little louder than he finds things funny. He asks questions he already knows the answers to, because asking questions looks engaged. He nods along to opinions he disagrees with, because the room isn't safe for the real response. He makes himself available, open, present, warm, all things he can be, but on demand, under pressure, in a context that never asked him what he actually needed first. And when he gets home, he doesn't feel tired the way you feel tired after running. He feels something different, something specific. He feels fragmented, like pieces of him are still back in that room. A piece he left when he laughed at the joke that wasn't funny. A piece he left when he agreed with the opinion he thought was wrong. A piece he left when he performed enthusiasm he didn't feel for 20 minutes straight. He sits down, and he has to collect himself back together. Quietly, alone, slowly. That process, that silent reassembly is not weakness. It is not antisocial behavior. It is the psychological cost of holding a false shape for hours, and the world never factors it into the bill. Actors have a name for it. They call it the cost of the character, the psychological price of inhabiting something you're not. The difference between Emrys and an actor: the actor gets to take the costume off at the end of the shoot. Emrys doesn't always get that option, because the world doesn't announce itself as a stage. It just keeps running. And the performance requirement never goes away. It just changes location, work, then the social event, then the family dinner, then the date, then the networking thing. Shape after shape after shape, none of them his, all of them expensive. Stole the only time Emrys actually recovers. Emrys used to have a Sunday ritual. Nothing dramatic. He'd wake up with no alarm, make something slow, sit near the window. No plan, no agenda, no podcast queued up, no task list waiting. Just a few hours of being completely unhurriedly inside his own head. And those Sunday mornings were quietly the most productive thing he did all week. Not because he was working, but because his brain, finally off the hook, would start doing the thing it does best. Connecting, wandering, reaching sideways into ideas with no pressure to arrive anywhere. Solutions would appear from nowhere. Things he'd been stuck on for days would simply loosen, like a knot that releases when you stop pulling at it. Those mornings were not nothing. Those mornings were everything. Then he found the content, the productivity content, and within 6 months those Sundays were gone. He started consuming the newsletters, the quotes on black backgrounds, and what did all of it tell him about those quiet, drifting, purposeless Sunday mornings? It tells him they're a problem. It tells him the moment he's not producing, not outputting, not optimizing, not building, he is falling behind someone who is. It gives his most essential recovery process a name. It calls it laziness, and so Emrys fills the gaps. Side project, second income stream. He is always doing something. He is never just in himself. And 6 months later he sits at his desk and stares at a blank page and feels nothing. No ideas, no connections, no threads. Just the sound of a machine running dry. He wonders why he feels creatively dead. He wonders why everything feels like going through motions. He wonders why the thing that used to feel like a superpower has gone completely silent. Here's the answer. Nobody in the productivity space will sell you. You cannot extract from a well you never refill. And the only thing that refills Emrys's well, the only thing, is the exact thing hustle culture convinced him was a waste of time. The silence, the drift, the long unhurried, purposeless sitting with his own mind. He gave it up to become more productive, and in doing so, he dismantled the one engine that made him extraordinary, That is not irony. That is the machine working exactly as designed. And poured poison into it. Someone sent Emrys a photo once. Her group photo, a night out. 8 people laughing at something, arms around each other, glasses raised. He knew 3 of them. He hadn't been invited. Not out of cruelty, he just wasn't thought of. And the thing that hit him wasn't the not being invited. He probably would have declined anyway. What hit him was the caption. These people. 2 words. And underneath it, 47 likes, 12 comments, all warmth, all affirmation. These people. And Emrys sat with his phone in his hand and tried to think of who would say that about him. Who would raise a glass and mean it and post it, and have 12 people agree. He couldn't land on an answer. Not because he had no one, but because the connections he had didn't live on the surface where that kind of thing happens. His connections, the real ones, were buried deep. Private, quiet, unposted, and the world had recently decided that connections which don't show up on a screen aren't quite real. Then he made the mistake of opening his feed. And the algorithm, which has been studying him longer than any friend has, knows exactly what to show him. Not miserable people. People at rooftop parties, people celebrating together, people on trips to places that look like they were designed to be photographed, people laughing in groups the way people only laugh in photos. And something moves in Emrys. Not a thought, not a rational process. Something older and faster than thought. A feeling. Cold, quiet, specific. That his Tuesday, his real, honest, genuinely nourishing Tuesday, was a smaller life than what he's looking at on the screen. Now here's where it gets ugly. The algorithm didn't choose this content to hurt him. It chose this content because it knows, from 10,000 data points of his behavior, that comparison keeps him scrolling. Inadequacy is engagement. The gap between what you have and what you're being shown is the product. And for Emrys, for someone who already moves through a world that treats his natural way of being as insufficient, this feed is not neutral entertainment. It is a confirmation. Hourly. Daily. The life you're living, the quiet, the depth, the solitude. Apparently that's not enough. But here's the layer underneath even that. The lives on that screen are not lives. They are performances of lives. 15 minutes around a photograph. The rooftop party where 2 people had a screaming argument in the Uber home. The trip where they were anxious and exhausted and checked their phones the whole time. The group of friends who haven't had a real conversation in 4 years. None of that is in the frame. None of that is in the caption. Emrys is comparing his entire interior reality. His doubts, his real days, his unfiltered experience of being alive, to someone else's highlight reel. And he's losing the comparison. Not because his life is smaller, but because his life is real. And real doesn't photograph well. And left Emrys's kind of hunger behind. Emrys had a conversation once, years ago now. He barely remembers the person's name, but he remembers the conversation like it happened last week. They were stuck somewhere, delayed flight, uncomfortable chairs. Neither of them had anywhere to be. And somehow, the way it only happens when the usual social exits are removed, they started talking, really talking, about why people self-destruct when they're finally getting what they want. About whether memory is something you have or something you construct. About the strange grief that comes from outgrowing a version of yourself. 2 hours disappeared. Not performing, not networking, not watching the clock. Just 2 minds going somewhere together, with no destination and no pressure to arrive. Emrys went home that night feeling like something had been fed in him that he didn't know was starving. That was 11 years ago. He hasn't had a conversation like that since. Not because people aren't capable of it, but because the infrastructure of modern connection made sure there was never enough space or silence or stillness for it to happen again. Modern connection infrastructure was not built for that conversation. It was built for volume. Emoji reaction to a story, quick reply to a meme, 30-second voice note while driving, comment under a post, a DM that says haha yes to something that deserved a 20-minute discussion. The tools are engineered for speed and maximum surface contact. Touch as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, with as little friction as possible. And depth? Depth is friction. Depth is slow. Depth doesn't scale. So it got left behind. And here is the specific, Merciless loneliness this creates for Emrys. He has contacts, hundreds. He has group chats he hasn't opened in 2 weeks. He has people who would describe him as a friend. And he sits on a Saturday night feeling like the last person alive. Not because he has no one. Because none of the connection is landing where he actually lives. He is starving in a room full of food he can't eat. And when he tries to go deeper, when he steers a conversation towards something real, he watches the other person get slightly uncomfortable. Change the subject. Laugh it off. Pull back to the surface where it's safe and easy and fast. And Emrys retreats. He learns slowly to keep the depth to himself. He learns to speak the language of the surface. He gets very good at it, or maybe he just pretends to. And with every year that passes, the real conversation he's been waiting for feels further away. Not because people don't exist who could have it, but because the infrastructure of modern life made sure they'd never find each other in the noise. Sign 6. The system that was supposed to help Emrys handed him the same knife. This one lands differently from the rest, because this one hides inside something that looks like care. Emrys filled out a questionnaire once. One of those standard mental health screening tools. 12 questions, multiple choice. And he sat there and read question 7. How often do you prefer to spend time alone rather than with others? The options ranged from rarely to almost always. And he stared at that question for a long time. Because the way it was written, the way the scale was arranged, made it very clear which answer was healthy. Rarely. The correct answer was rarely. Preferring your own company was already, before the questionnaire even scored itself, framed as a symptom. Not a personality, not a valid way of being, a symptom. And Emrys put down the pen and felt something cold and specific settle in his chest, not because he was in crisis, but because the system designed to understand him had already decided what he was before he opened his mouth. And for many people in many situations, that's right. But something got lost along the way. 2 completely different experiences got collapsed into one word. Loneliness, which is painful, which is unwanted, which comes from being cut off from connection you need. And solitude, which is nourishing, which is chosen, which is the specific condition under which certain minds do their best living. The conversation treated them as the same thing. And in doing so, it told Emrys that the thing keeping him sane was actually what was making him sick. Emrys goes to see someone. He talks about feeling off, hollowed out, like something is grinding him down but he can't locate the source. And the questions come. Do you spend time with friends? Do you get out of the house? Are you isolating? Reasonable questions. Well-meaning questions. Questions that are exactly wrong for the person sitting in the chair. Because Emrys didn't come in because he needs more people. He came in because he's exhausted. Exhausted from performing. Exhausted from holding shapes that aren't his. Exhausted from a world that was built for a different kind of nervous system and charges him full price anyway. He came in because he has spent years treating his own nature as a problem to be solved. And the very room he walked into for help hands him the same translation dictionary everyone else has been handing him his whole life. Here, try to be more like the people the world was built for. Nobody asked whether the solitude was the problem or the solution. Nobody said, what if the exhaustion isn't coming from being alone too much? What if it's coming from never being allowed to be? Nobody said the thing Emrys had needed someone to say for 20 years. The problem might not be you. The problem might be that the world was designed for a different kind of person, and you keep being handed the bill. So what do you do with all of this? This isn't a video telling Emrys or anyone like him to disappear from the world. That's not the answer. The answer is something quieter and more radical at the same time. It's recognition. Seeing clearly that the drain is real. That the exhaustion after performing is not weakness. It is the accurate price of doing something unnatural. That the hunger for depth is not a flaw. It is a specification. That the need for silence is not laziness. It is maintenance. That the solitude is not the wound. The solitude is where Emrys heals the wounds the world gives him on the way in. And here's the thing modern life didn't calculate. The mind that runs this deep doesn't break under pressure. It goes underground, quietly, without announcement, and underground, away from the noise and the performance and the shallow infrastructure. It gets to work. It always has. The things built in quiet rooms, the ideas that came from long unhurried thinking, The work that couldn't have been done in the open office, at the loud party, in the group chat. That work came from someone like Emrys, who finally stopped apologizing for what he needed and started protecting it instead. If any moment in this felt like something you've been trying to put into words for years, share it, not for the algorithm, not for the numbers, but because somewhere right now, there is someone sitting alone in a quiet room wondering if they are the only person who feels the exact shape of this. They are not. They never were. Drop one word in the comments, just one. The word that describes what it cost you to move through a world that wasn't built for how you work. One word. Let's see what's down there. We'll see you in the next one, whenever you're ready.